Welcome to Everything House Music and More. And my special guest today is the one and only, the Mr. Warehouse himself, Mr. Robert Williams. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
I'm fine, my Rich. How are you?
I am just wonderful because I am just so ecstatic that you're doing this interview today, and I really appreciate that, sir.
Okay, no problem.
So you ready to get into it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so here we go. Robert, before we get to your Chicago story, tell us about your New York underground party experiences.
Well, basically, I was introduced in high school to the social media of New York and through artists and different people. And I was introduced also to different clubs and designers. So all these people I hung out with, like Halston and
Right.
Willie Ware and all of that.
But before we get into depth, I want to tell people that you are originally from Harvey, Illinois, and you are Harvey World. That's right?
That's correct.
Yes, Harvey World, y'all. That's right. Look at that. All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I had to get that in, Robert.
All right. So basically, I was like a super club tart because I knew all these people and I could get in wherever I wanted to get in.
Right. So what were your influences at that time?
Well, my only real influence is when my cousin, I met him in the East Village, and he said he was having lunch with his boy David, and I was like, okay, he should come down and have lunch with us. So I went down to have lunch, and it was David Mancuso from the law.
Right.
So they invited me to a party. David said, come to by my place on Saturday, get there, you can get there from 12 to whatever. And I went, and it was like overwhelming.
Right. So what were those parties like at one of those Dave Mancuso's parties?
Well, I think going to David's party, I learned about the artistic way of presenting sound and music to an audience.
Okay.
Because I don't remember, like, people are more interested today, a lot of DJs, in blending and mixing or whatever,
Right.
I don't know if he did that really well.
Correct.
Per se.
At that time, we were just playing great music.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way he presented music was phenomenal because, like, at that first party I went to, it was like around 8 o'clock in the morning and all the lights went out, and we were all in there a little buzzed and
Right.
And no music.
No music.
Complete darkness. And at that point, I was introduced to Nina Simone.
Wow.
Because he played Here Comes the Sun.
Okay.
I had never heard Here Comes the Sun, and especially on a sound system like that.
Right.
It's a difference when you hear music on audio stuff that's really good.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he also played Holy Holy by Aretha Franklin through the party. And my mother had that album.
Right. Now, what year was this that you went down there, Robert?
Probably 69, 70.
Okay, gotcha. Wow. So he was just playing all types of music, all formats.
His music was like, we were on like a storybook ride musically.
Okay. Right.
Because, I don't know, he was the most fantastic DJ I've ever experienced.
Right.
During that time, and influenced people because the way he presented music to us, we never knew what he was going to play.
Okay.
We didn't go to the loft to hear certain things, per se.
Okay.
We didn't know what he was going to play. All we knew was it was going to be a fantastic party.
Right.
Like early in the morning after the party was over, he had this Oriental girl serving breakfast to a few of the special clientele.
Right.
But I never knew David. He going to his party was the only time I've ever contemplated suicide
Oh, wow.
because it was so intense in there. Myself, I said, well, I got to get out of here. This is too much.
Wow.
And I thought about jumping out the window because that's the only exit I could think about, but it was too crowded, so I couldn't get through the window.
Oh, my goodness. So how many people did the loft hold at that time?
Maybe 100.
Okay.
But that was his own private loft.
Right.
That was his living space. He played out of a little window on one side, and on the other side was a kitchen.
So it was actually where he lived at.
Yeah, he lived there.
Okay.
Because above the DJ area was his bed, a loft bed.
Oh, get out of here. Wow. So there were celebrities just inside his home.
Yeah.
That's it. Wow. Okay.
And it was always so crowded. It was like well, you couldn't be any kind of phobic.
Right.
Physical phobicness,
Correct.
like.
Because you were so close. Right.
I mean, people, the bodies were rubbing.
Yeah.
Like you could faint on the dance floor and wouldn't fall.
Right. Wow.
So it was, it was very, very intense.
Okay. So let's go to how did you meet Larry Levan and Frankie Knuckles?
I worked at Spotswood Juvenile Center in the Bronx. Okay. And those two 14-year-olds were on my caseload.
Get out of here. Get out of here for juvie.
Yeah.
Wow. So you had Larry Levan and Frankie Knuckles on your list for the juvie list.
Right.
Wow.
Now, they weren't any way famous or anything, or they hadn't done anything.
Because they was 14 years old at the time.
Right. They were just truants, right? Mm-hmm. And I was trying to teach them not to be, I thought they were going to be trannies at first. Because they used to wear lipstick.
Okay.
And different kind of wild outfits, As a matter of fact, Frankie's name was Seta.
Seta.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here.
They called him Seta.
And the purpose for that was for what?
Because he was flamboyant.
Okay.
Both him and Larry.
Okay.
Yeah, they were young, wild kids.
Right.
Being flamboyant in New York.
Now, at that time, you were like 20, you said, correct?
Yeah,
you were 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So were either of them DJs at the time?
No.
Nobody?
No.
Okay.
Larry approached me and asked me to come with him to this club called the Gallery.
Okay.
Because the DJ there was going to teach him how to DJ. I had never been to the Gallery. And so I said, okay. But the Gallery was where Nicky Sonano was a DJ.
Correct.
And I was introduced to Nicky, but the Gallery was more like I would consider a hippie-ish kind of white club.
Okay.
For gays. Okay. It was mixed, but
right.
It was a little Nelly for me.
Okay. Okay.
So Frankie and Larry used to go down there all the time, and Nicky helped them. He taught them how to decorate a club.
Okay.
With balloons and streamers and stuff. And also, he kind of like taught me because I observed. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, he used to be a pretty good DJ, but I didn't like the club so much. He would be so high.
Right.
I was like, really?
Right. So, after all that, what brought you to Chicago then?
Well, I had a long and active career in New York.
Okay.
My mother had left me there and sold our building and left and moved to L.A. But I had become a little worn out, Okay,
just burnt out.
Yeah, burnt out.
Okay.
And my aunt suggested I come here. I had family here anyway, but I never seen them, hardly.
Right.
And she said, you could get a better job. Come here. The job opportunities are great. And I was like, okay. So I moved. And when I got here, I was like, my boy Michael Matthews,
Michael Matthews, right?
a fraternity brother, he who used to come to New York and visit me with his friend Larry Hope. He was ecstatic that I was moving here. And I didn't understand why he was so excited.
Right.
And then when I got here, he asked me to help him and his little group to give a New York party in Chicago.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, whatever, because it was boring at first.
Now, was that U.S. Studios?
No.
Oh, that wasn't U.S. Studios yet. Okay.
The group in which Michael belonged to, it was like a gay club, little club.
Okay.
They called themselves Us.
Ah, okay.
Okay? And so it was like a little social club, but gay.
Okay.
Okay? With Donald Crosby, Michael Matthews, Vicky, and a few others, right?
Okay.
And so I helped them. Michael showed me around Chicago in terms of we went to grand stage lighting.
Okay.
The party that we were going to give was in one of their apartments on East Belmont.
Okay.
Okay. So I said, let's go. We went to grand stage lighting. We rented Voice to the Theater speakers.
Okay.
For the apartment, for the party.
Right, right.
And set the punch up and put balloons in. And the party had just started, and the police came and said, are you crazy? Playing speakers like this in this apartment?
Right.
No.
And shut it down.
And shut it down.
Okay.
So I asked Michael, I said, well, do y'all have lofts here in Chicago? Well, I asked his group, and they didn't know what lofts were.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But Michael knew, and then I think it was Michael, maybe, I don't know who else. They found this girl who designed those hats, those militant hats, those knit hats for the revolution, Black Revolution, the red, black, and green hats.
Right.
She had a loft space at 116 South Clinton.
Okay.
So she agreed to let us, that group, social group,
right,
which I was not a part of.
Okay.
I was just a tag along because I was friends with Michael.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and an advisor to how to put it together, the party.
Yeah.
So I went, and they let us, she rented out the space. They rented out the space. And they passed out index cards to their groups of people.
Correct.
And the party was packed. They came, and they only charged I think $2 or something like that.
Okay.
And it was so crowded that the police had came, but they couldn't get up the stairs because there was too many people.
Oh, wow.
And they were letting people out on the freight elevator in the alley.
Oh, okay.
That's how you left.
Right.
Because it was too crowded.
And then Michael Matthews was the only DJ at that time then?
Him and Greg Winfield's brother, Benny Winfield, he was part of the group.
Okay.
Group also, right? Those two were DJs.
Okay.
Michael and Benny of that group.
Right.
Us. It's called Us.
And so it was never called U.S. Studios, just
No.
Us Studios. Okay. No. Gotcha. That's history right there, y'all.
It was never called Us Studios. That was different. That was me.
Okay.
They were Us. I was a studio. But only when we parted.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
Because that group, and we had internal strife. They had voted me in as the president of their little social club, and I had removed a few people back then.
Okay.
Because I was always a business-minded person.
Right.
And they didn't understand where I was coming from, so they got mad. and I asked one of the members to leave, which was Donald, because they weren't paying their dues or something like that. I don't
Okay.
remember, but they left. Okay, Clinton Street burnt down.
Right.
Okay, the whole building caught on fire and fell onto the Flourishing Shoe Company, and so we got Benny Winfield
Right.
was hooked up with this guy named Siegfried Schuh, this
Okay.
master violinist.
Right.
He was sponsoring their parties.
Okay.
Okay, so me and Ziggy went to this real estate at 555, people who own that building, 555 West Adams, called Arthur Schultz and Associates.
Okay.
After they owned the building on Clinton Street too. So they agreed to let us use 555 West Adams on the 7th floor.
Okay.
The building really only went up to 6, and then you walk up to 7.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
So that's where the parties really started.
Originated from. Right. Okay.
Well, they had more parties, but like I said, I was not really part of the group at that point.
Correct.
Until then.
Right.
Okay? So after the breakup, they went and opened up their own club called the Bowery.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
And that left me, Benny Winfield, and Ziggy.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay? Michael Matthews, Donald Crawford, all of them went and opened up their club called the Bowery.
Bowery, right.
They had dropped their name Us and changed it to the Bowery.
Correct.
So that left me and Ziggy like clubless, so to speak.
Okay.
And we were sitting contemplating that we were out of business and in ruins.
Right, right.
And we were sitting at that building, and we looked out the back window, and we saw this little 3-story building on Jefferson.
Okay.
Because that building ran from Canal all the way to Jefferson,
Okay.
a whole block.
Right.
The space that they had was 10,000 square feet. We had to divide it
Ah, okay.
because it was too big for us to handle.
Right.
Right? So that's when me and Ziggy decided that let's look at that building. Maybe we could have a club there.
Okay.
And they was going to lease it to us, but they said, what's your company?
Right.
So I said, well, they would call Us. Let me put studio on there. So it became Us. I incorporated Us Studio as it is today.
Okay.
It's incorporated. It's been incorporated since 1976.
Wow.
Okay.
And you own that copyright?
Yeah.
Okay.
As to today.
Right.
It's in good standing.
Okay.
So we leased the space, and then me and Ziggy was like, what are we going to do with this space?
Right.
And then I said, well, let me see if some of my friends will help me out in New York.
Okay.
So I flew back to New York. I asked Larry
Levin.
and T. Scott,
Okay.
could they come help me be a DJ? They told me no, because I had bad-mouthed Chicago previously.
Right.
On one of my visits, you know.
Okay.
And then at that particular time, Larry was negotiating with Mike Brody, to do Paradise Garage. It hadn't opened yet.
Okay.
So the warehouse opened before Paradise Garage.
Ah, wow. Okay.
So they were negotiating. So I was like, no DJ, okay.
Right.
So I said, I guess I'm going to have to play.
Oh, get out of here.
So I played. Nobody really came, you know.
So what type of system was in there at that time?
Oh, I'm jumping the gun.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
So I asked T. Scott, I asked Larry the Band, and somebody else. But they all was like, no, Robert, you did Chicago a little, Why
Wow.
you want us to come out there?
Right.
So I was like, I was a little frustrated with the matter. Then I thought about Frankie.
Okay.
I said, yeah, he played records with Larry, And Frankie was like, he wasn't DJing because, see, Frankie Knuckles in New York at that time, was not a DJ.
Okay.
Only Larry the band was.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Frankie was going to Parsons School of Design to be a fashion illustrator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So he wasn't really that interested in DJing.
Right.
But when I asked him, he was like, So I showed him the building.
Okay.
So he was an art student, so he was like, oh, that's an Art Deco building. And I showed him the interior of the building, and he was like, okay, maybe I could. So I invited him out to look at it, and he came out. He said, oh, yeah, we got to do this.
Wow.
So he said, what kind of sound they got here? I said, oh, I forgot about that.
Okay.
I got to go back to New York.
Right.
So I went back to New York and talked to my friend Richard Long.
Nice.
Okay. And Richard was like, really, Robert, you expect me to come out? And then I made a deal with him because he was a gay guy.
Okay.
So I was going to hook him up with some guys. And he was like, yes, that's
So you was a little pimp before then, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of like,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So Richard came out, looked the space over. So he said, I'll design you a sound system just for this space.
Okay.
So the system in the warehouse was designed for the warehouse,
Okay.
for its dimensions and everything.
Right.
And
So let me ask you this. Let me stop you right. So it was the warehouse, or was it us studios? Or was it?
it was a studio, but just like anything, the people nicknamed it the warehouse
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
because it was in a warehouse space, Chicagoans.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Now, was with that us studios at that time? Was it predominantly a white gay club?
No.
Okay, so it wasn't white patrons going there or anything at the time.
No, not at all. It was like, first of all, when that split came,
Yes, sir.
no one came to the warehouse per se because Donald and Vicky and all them and Michael, they opened their club called the Bowery.
Okay.
Okay, so they were a gay social club.
Ah, okay.
So all the clientele, the gay clientele, and whatever clientele they had, followed them.
Gotcha.
So we had no dibs on that crowd, so to speak.
Okay, so everyone that been telling the story that so-called us/US studios were predominantly a white gay club is not telling the truth then.
No, they're not.
Wow. Because
No.
I mean, everybody I interviewed.
Well, see, I don't know why they were saying that because, okay, me being the owner,
correct.
I have pictures of the club and the dance floor.
Right.
And if you can find all those white people that they say were in there, hey,
Right.
let me know.
So now we got the history, y'all. We getting it straight right now. How everybody who said post-dated before this saying that, oh, well, US or us studios before then was predominantly a white gay club. So,
No.
okay. Gotcha. Okay.
It was not. So what happened was Frankie was trying to play, a couple of people came.
Okay.
Chicagoans are shady.
Right.
So it was like, they were like, because of Donald and Vicky and Michael on them, they were like bad-mouthing
You.
me.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So nobody was coming.
Okay.
It was set up as a club, but nobody was coming. It was
Right.
not enough people coming, like 20.
Yeah.
So most of the people were going to the Bowery.
Right.
Okay. So Frankie was like, what's up with this place called the Bowery?
Right.
I was like, they taking all your business. We ain't gonna have no club. I was like, he said, take me there. And I was like, no.
So Frankie asked to go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, no, but he was like, come on. So I said, okay. So I took him to the Bowery. Now, Michael was my friend.
Right. Michael Matthews.
Right.
Right.
We've always been friends, even through that little breakup thing.
Correct. Right.
So he recognized Frankie Knuckles when I brought him there.
Okay.
And he got extra excited.
Right.
So he asked Frankie, would he play at the Bowery
At that night.
that night?
Okay.
And Frankie said yes, and I was like, really?
Oh, I know you was heated then.
Yeah, I was a little heated.
Okay.
Frankie played, tore the place up. Okay?
Right.
People were like, where are you coming from? You know, where did you come from? Who are you?
Right. So at that time, what records was he playing, Robert? You remember some key records that was hot at that time?
Like Crystal World. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that one. Crystal World.
Oh, okay.
You got one on me on that one. I will after today though.
Okay. Bohannon.
Bohannon. Okay.
I'm surprised you don't know about Crystal World, but anyway, you're young. But those kind of tunes.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
So people asked Frankie, what was he playing? And he told them the Warehouse.
Oh.
And they were like, oh, we got to hear you again.
Right.
So that caused a big problem because then he invited all those people. They came to the Warehouse. I said, well, give them free passes.
Right. So the people from the Bowery came to the Warehouse the week after that.
Right.
Okay.
For free.
For free. Wow.
And then the next party was for free.
Okay.
But the next party was a membership drive party.
Ah, okay.
So we collected members then.
Gotcha. Smart, Robert. Very smart. So,
Yeah.
So what was the actual fee to get into the Warehouse or a studio at that time?
For members, it was $5.
Okay.
For guests, it was like $7.
Okay. And then how much was the member fee to join the Warehouse at that time?
$25.
$25. Okay. Gotcha.
But you had to be approved by another member to get in.
Okay. Okay. Right.
So like, if you came to me and said, I want this guy to apply for a membership,
Right.
he'd have to put you down for a reference. And then we came and talked to you about it.
Okay. Gotcha.
You know?
It was like a league club then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
And the membership cards, have you ever seen one?
Not the Warehouse. A power plant I have, but not the Warehouse.
Okay, the membership cards were like, at this time, this is in the 70s, right?
Right.
But the membership cards were like your debit card. They were plastic.
Oh, really?
They were fantastic.
Okay.
I have to show them to you.
Yes, sir.
Way ahead of the game.
Okay.
Okay. So that went on. The Warehouse was successful with Frankie. But then they had people were trying to,
Infiltrate.
yes,
Yes.
like Dave Medusa.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Get out of here. Wow.
So Dave Medusa decided to open up his own club
Okay.
on Harrison Street called
Okay.
Medusa's.
Right.
But the only problem was he didn't have any money to buy equipment. So he asked Frankie to loan him the Warehouse of equipment.
What?
And Frankie loaned him some stuff, right?
Get out of here.
And I didn't know this, though. Until
Right.
I went to the club, and I was like,
Take your stuff out.
I shut the party down.
Okay.
Take it out.
Wow.
They were like, oh, Robert. You know, they were
So
dead.
at that time, the Warehouse studios, how many people did it hold, Robert?
It could hold 500.
500. Okay.
During a night, it usually had about 600 or 700 people coming through the door.
Doing in and out. Right. Okay.
You know, now what had happened is the membership. You know, like I patterned the membership of the warehouse after my good friend David Mancuso.
Right.
So I thought that's the only pattern I had,
Correct. Right.
template I had to
Go
a
by.
club, go
Right.
by,
Yeah.
because that was my favorite club.
Right.
Okay, so you had to call your members. Like, say, if you were coming to the party,
Right.
or say if you decided not to come to the party, you could call in your guests.
Ah, okay. So this was all promoted by word of mouth at that time. Just
Well,
all
we had membership applications.
membership applications. Okay.
Right. And then what happened was, like, if Maurice said, okay, a lot of the gay kids who were coming to the warehouse had heterosexual friends.
Right.
They were curious about, where the hell are you coming from at
Right.
5 in the morning looking like this?
Right.
Oh, I just was out at the warehouse having a good time.
Yeah.
So who? What?
Right.
So they would invite them,
Okay.
and they would get stuck. You know, like, what the hell?
Right.
Yeah.
So approximately how much longer the time passes after everybody came from the Bowery to the warehouse where it became packed every weekend?
Oh, about a month?
About a month. Okay. Now, was the warehouse open any other days besides Saturdays?
No, unless we had a special party.
Got you. Okay.
Only on Saturday.
Only on Saturdays.
And fast forwarding, people don't know this, but Frankie Knuckles was responsible for the warehouse closing.
For the warehouse closing.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Elaborate on that, Robert.
Because I myself, he was a DJ, I'm the businessman. Right?
Correct. Right.
So people don't realize what I had to go through in the 70s in Chicago to open a space like that.
Right.
Okay, in a prejudiced city.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Still to this day.
So that's true. So I was tied in with the politicians, with Mayor Daley,
Right.
the Democratic organization.
Right.
My lawyer was Mr. Herbert N. Sherratt,
Okay.
who was Bob Sherratt's brother.
Wow.
On Channel 11, you familiar
Yeah,
with
I
Bob
remember,
Sherratt?
yep.
Yeah, his brother was my attorney.
Right.
So he was representing the Democratic organization in Chicago.
Right.
And also he had me doing various things like fundraisers at the warehouse
Yeah.
for Mayor Daley,
Okay.
the father.
Right.
So the warehouse was not to be touched.
Yeah.
So the police came there.
Right.
You know, like your parents came to the warehouse,
Right.
which was one of my better nights when they came.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the parents came, like your parents came. I know Maurice is in here.
Right. Let me in here and see what's going on.
And the
Right.
police take him to your parents to the top of the dance floor stairs.
Right.
And the parents were like, oh my God, we're all going to hell.
Okay.
But Frankie, like I said, the warehouse was tied in.
Okay.
It was never raided, nothing.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Because you was connected. Right.
Yeah, I was connected.
Right.
Okay, one day, some rookie building department people were on Jefferson
Okay.
looking around.
Right.
You know, I guess it was their beat or whatever.
Yeah.
And they happened to hear music coming out of the warehouse. And they knocked on the door. They knocked on the DJ door.
Right.
Because the DJ booth was in the dock area of the building.
Okay.
And Frankie let him in,
Okay.
showed him around, told him it was his club.
Okay.
And after they went through the whole entire building and they asked what the capacity was in the party,
Right.
then all of a sudden they wrote him out citations.
Ah. And you didn't know none of this.
No, I wasn't around. He was living in the warehouse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, he was living there.
Uh-huh.
Get out of here. Wow.
So they wrote him out about 7 or 8 citations.
Okay.
Okay. So when they did that, he turned around and said, "Oh well, no, I made a mistake. I don't own the place. That's Robert Williams."
Right. After the citations, right.
Yeah. So they contacted me, and the owners of the property said, "Robert, we're not putting in a new dance floor. We're not putting in steel girders."
Right.
Because the building was a timber building, if you know what that means.
Yeah.
It's all made of wood.
Wood, right.
Okay. Built in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Okay. And the floor did kind of like go
Up and down, right.
But we had to put braces in the basement
Okay.
for the floor. So they said, we're not spending that money,
Yeah.
to do this.
Right.
You're going to have to find somewhere else. I was like, what?
Wow.
So they said that, well, Robert, we know other industrial brokers in the city,
Right.
and we'll find you somebody.
Okay.
So they found me another guy. I think his name was Mr. Linden.
Okay.
Well, it was the old Swin Bicycle Company
Okay.
at 16th and Indiana.
Right.
So I went and looked. It was on the ground level right next to the yellow taxi company.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is great. So I told Frankie, this is where we're going. But Frankie was still heated with me over the Medusa Act.
Really? Because you took the sound system out.
Right.
Right.
And he said I was stifling his career.
Wow.
So I said, well, however, you can't do that.
Right.
That belongs to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was Frankie getting paid every Saturday? How did that work out between you guys?
Oh, yeah, every Saturday.
Every Saturday. And may I ask you at that time, what was the pay that Frankie was getting at that time?
It varied, sometimes 300, 400.
Okay.
He was paid well.
Okay.
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 Because at that time, the warehouse had a monopoly
Right.
on after-hour parties. It was not the only after-hours club in the city.
Right.
It was this club called Social Sounds Production, was at 178 West Randolph.
Okay.
And there was Castles in the Sky with Michael Isabuku and Michael Field.
Wow. Okay.
So while the warehouse was in transition,
Right.
moving from 206 South Jefferson
Right.
to 16th in Indiana,
Right.
something else happened. These white boys, friends of mine, Michael Graber and them, they had a club, an after-hours club.
Okay.
But it was all white.
Right.
White boy gay club, right?
Okay.
Called the Riverside Club.
Ah.
Which is at 115 North Hall Street.
Right.
I say it like this, but it was right next to Peony Green, right?
Right.
So some of the white boys, the gay white boys, were tricking off with some of the black hood boys
At Cabrini Green.
at Cabrini
Oh
Green.
my goodness! Are you serious, Robert?
So what happened? One of the hood boys from the Green decided, well, let's rob them instead.
Right.
We rob these white boys.
Yeah.
So when that started happening, Michael Graber and them, they had to move their club.
Right.
They had to go.
Right.
Because, they weren't tolerating that.
Yeah.
So they knew what was going on with the warehouse that was in transition, so they offered Frankie Knuckles the club.
Get out of here.
But what they were doing, in essence, they were only they couldn't get out of the lease.
Correct.
So they wanted Frankie to, babysit their lease, sublet, babysit it. Because they couldn't stay there because shit was going on.
Right.
So Frankie came to me and told me about it. I was like, no.
Yeah.
So he said, well, I'm leaving you. I want my own club. I was like, whatever.
Right.
Because I'm still working on the warehouse on 16.
Indiana.
Right.
Right.
And so when he left, then I had no DJ.
Oh.
Okay? So he went to open up his own club called the Power Plant.
Right.
Okay? And I was like, oh, well, what the hell? But he forgot that I was a business person.
Right.
That was my format.
Correct.
He was only taking a carbon with him. I had the original format of this
Right.
club thing.
Right.
And then I had my boy here from New York, Ron Braswell.
Okay.
So I was like, Ron, we kind of screwed a little, no DJ. He was like, I'll bam on. I was like, okay, you go look for a DJ. I got to get this club together.
Okay.
Because I couldn't bag down because I had started.
Right.
Okay.
Now, have you moved everything from the old warehouse to 16th and Indiana yet?
No.
Okay.
It stayed there.
It stayed there.
Until I was getting it together.
Okay. So nothing else was going on there since Frankie left and you left. You were just working on 16th and Indiana.
Putting in the new floors, repairing the wooden floors.
Gotcha.
And whatever.
Okay.
So, meanwhile, Frankie decides to open up the power plant.
Right.
So, Ron Braswell found me this DJ named Ron Hardy from the Ritz.
Yeah.
And brought him to me, right?
Right.
And Ron Hardy told me no.
Really?
Yeah, because see, on the other hand, Frankie Knuckles had heard about this and hired Ron Hardy to play at the power plant on Friday night.
Oh.
He was playing on Saturday night. It was a little messy, but you know.
Yeah, y'all was really messy.
Yeah, so Ron Hardy told me that the reason he wouldn't play for me at the warehouse because Frankie had the warehouse.
Okay.
You know, and everybody was going to follow Frankie anyway, and you're not going to get no business.
Right.
I was like, for real? He was like, for real.
And you had the blueprint, so they doubted you, huh?
Right.
Okay.
But see, during the period that the warehouse was open,
Yeah.
in the late part of the warehouse, I had opened up another club anyway in Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, called the Music Box.
Oh, really?
So I owned the Music Box too in Mexico. So I was flying back and forth.
Wow.
In the warehouse,
Okay.
having a ball. So my boy, Tony Miner, who was my partner,
Okay.
he got a job out in L.A. So he's like, we're closing this, I got to go.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, I'll take the corporate charter and the name and
Right.
goodbye.
Okay.
So then I was listening to Ron Hardy telling me no and stuff. So then all of a sudden I'm trying to figure it out, what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Then the light went on. Oh, well, Robert, you got another club.
Right.
So I reapproached Ron Hardy again.
Right.
And I said, look, I got this club I'm opening up called the Music Box
Okay.
right here. And you can be the resident DJ.
Right.
You're not going to get anywhere over there at the power plant because that's Frankie's.
Right.
You're always going to be second fiddle.
Wow.
So,
So you had a hand in all that, huh?
yeah. So you can
Right.
be here and have your own club. Now you're going to probably be in competition with the power plant.
Right.
But do you think you can handle that?
And I guess the rest is history because he did it.
Yeah, he practiced. See, 16th in Indiana was his practice stage.
Right.
Because he wasn't really that good because he didn't know how to play after hour kind of like
Right.
thing.
Right.
And the music. So I had to tell him stories and about New York
Right.
and David.
Okay.
And then he was already in a musical family.
Right.
So he was like, okay. So he got it. You know.
Wow. So Robert, you were a huge unknowing influence of house culture, especially for stray kids on the South Side.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you believe the name house came from?
I'm not sure. I think it was a derivative from the warehouse.
Okay.
Because people used to tell Frankie, we are going. We're going down. He got that tape from that warehouse and
Right.
it shortened it off to house,
Right.
We got house music from the warehouse,
Yeah.
But in essence, it was the beginning, the very birth of house,
Right.
in a sense.
Yeah.
But the real creators of house music and its body were people like yourself, Wayne Williams,
Right.
Reggie Corner, all those, Chippy,
Right.
because you are the people that went home
Yeah.
after coming to the music box,
Right.
And saying like, well, see, I opened the music box. It wasn't a gay club.
Right.
It was a heterosexual club. People thought it was a gay club too, but it was not.
Right.
Because I mainly wanted the inner city heterosexual kids to experience that sound, that whole
Yes.
dynamics of after hours.
Right.
The
whole ambience of a club.
Right. And when you guys, as youth, heard that in the music, happy hour, like some of y'all were musicians in your mind anyway.
Right.
And you learned about the technical aspects of it, right? So, yeah, when y'all created the tracks,
Right.
that did it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like I used to go 2 tracks, Larry Sherman.
Right.
It was always funny to me. He down there, I told him don't be messing with Brian Hardy though.
Right.
And,
well, he was there.
Rocky Jones and all of them, right?
Excuse me. Yes.
So
Yeah.
I went through all that,
Right.
right? But just like when they opened up, when you guys, your group opened up the warehouse, when Rocky Jones and opened up the warehouse on Randolph.
Yeah.
People were like, Robert, you're not going to sue them for using your name?
Right.
I was like, I can't.
Yeah.
Because that's a nickname.
But you never, because you did a studio and not the warehouse.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So legally, my club was a studio.
Right.
The music box was different.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had that.
Right.
Yeah.
I had that because I had to change. The music box theater came at me and was like, that would be a no.
Right.
So I had to change the S to a Z.
Get out of here. Okay.
So I had no dibs on the name Warehouse.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
The music box theater and all of these other, and when they opened up on Randolph, the warehouse, people were like, they took your name.
No, because you didn't have anything to do it. So
I paid that no attention.
What was the difference between the warehouse and the music box crowd, perspectively? Like, was there 2 totally different crowds at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, like I said before, the warehouse crowd was predominantly gay with heterosexual kids there.
Gotcha.
A smaller percentage, but they were there.
Okay.
The music box was not geared to a gay crowd.
Right.
It was geared to a heterosexual crowd because I wanted the inner city. So at the music box, we had thugs.
Right.
The gang members, the GDs,
absolutely.
the BDs, and then the regular kids,
Right.
But I had to teach them how to get along because one boy came up to me, I remember once, and said, "Hey, Rob, I'm going to fuck dude up." I was like, "For what?" I was like, "Why?" Dude keep looking at me.
Right.
I said, "And?"
Yeah.
He said, "No, I don't get on like that."
Right.
I was like, "Get on like what?" He said, "Rob, I ain't gay." I said, "And? So looking is going to change you, make you gay?" So I had to teach these kids.
Yeah.
That's why your group are not homophobic.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
The people who created the real sound of house music, y'all created a different sound.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah.
So it was a more genuine sound.
Right.
Now, the kids who went to high school and these it's like Craig Loftus and Lloyd Branch and them people. Well, we had something like that.
Vertigo, right?
Vertigo.
Yeah.
I didn't know nothing about none of that.
Right, right.
So this was kids stuff.
Kid stuff, yeah. You wasn't there. So Robert, let me ask you a good question. Coming fast forward all these years, and you've been a part of this culture for so long, what do you think the state of house music is at right now?
Well, first of all, Farley and a few others, when you guys came out with tracks and stuff, right?
Right, Trax Records.
Yeah, all that.
Right.
They were trying to sell their product, Chippy, Marshall Jefferson, whatever.
Right.
They took the music to Europe
Right.
and was exploited by the Europeans.
Absolutely.
So that's why Chicago has lost its grip on its originality and its foundation of house music where it was created.
Okay.
Okay, because no one, oh well, let me put it like this. People in Chicago who represent Chicago and house music
Yes, sir.
are people who generally have to represent it, like yourself, like the chosen few,
Right.
like excursions,
Correct.
like they give parties in Detroit.
Yeah.
Now, there's a difference when you give a party in Detroit
Right.
or you're invited to play in
Right.
Detroit.
Right. Right.
That's a big difference.
Yes.
Okay? So you guys, you're a Grammy Award-winning producer, DJ, and what have you, right?
Correct.
So you're a genuine representation of Chicago and house music.
Absolutely.
And it's a continuance because you haven't stopped.
Right.
Terry Hunter hasn't stopped.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay, people who take our brand, this brand, and take it abroad to teach other people about the music,
Right.
okay? Those are the real components of house music. And those are the people that I look at.
Right.
And I can okay,
Right. Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But people who come to me,
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Come on.
and say, hey, Rob, I've been playing since 80.
Right.
And one guy said, I play just like Ron Hardy. I said, well, he's dead. What kind of music are you playing?
Right.
So you can't tell me, people, I've been playing a longevity means nothing
Wow.
to me.
Yeah.
What were you playing in your closet?
Okay.
If you're not representing this brand out here called house music correctly,
Right.
if you're not being a professional in it,
Yes.
I mean, just because you're playing, what that mean?
Ooh.
I can play.
Ooh. You preaching today, Robert.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It means nothing. I admire the chosen few
Yeah.
for what they have done and created in Chicago.
Absolutely.
I admire people like Reggie Corner, who has turned into a producer.
Right.
Okay. I admire Terry Hunter, which I've known for a long, long time.
Right. Absolutely.
I admire Mari Joshua, which I didn't know that well. I know him now. Okay. I mean, I knew you had won a Grammy, and I was like, I never knew.
Right.
See, you were like low key.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so people are like, Mari Joshua, yeah. I'm like, who is that? But he's the one that I said, yeah, ain't that the boy that won that Grammy?
Right.
I was like, oh, sneaky, huh? I said, but, I admire that you're not in I could say chitlin circuit kind of effect.
Right.
I don't hear you playing for just anybody.
Right.
Any place.
Yeah. Yeah, I choose particularly, like, if friends need me, I'm there.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, Terry and all that, they don't, well, Terry don't play for anybody.
Yeah.
And anybody. See, like if you're going to, it's the difference. Most of the DJs, I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to.
Okay.
Most of the DJs in Chicago that I know, DJing is just a hobby.
Right there. Right there. Say that again. There you go.
DJs that I know here, I don't care how long you played, it's a hobby. It's not a career. It's not a profession because, just because you've been playing 20 years in your back room, that don't mean nothing.
Yeah.
It's what you're doing out here in the world. Where are you taking this? Who are you teaching about this?
Yes, that's true, Robert. That's
so, like, I can say today, I haven't heard Maurice Joshua play.
Right.
But I know now he's a very professional person.
Right.
I don't have to hear him play.
Right.
Okay? Because I know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Or what he's done.
Right.
Okay? That's a junior Frankie Knuckles to me,
Well, I appreciate that, Robert.
You know what I'm saying? So, we can't get beside ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a DJ named Beloved.
Right.
From Jersey.
Yeah.
He came here and played. I don't know, he must have had a bad night. You know what I mean?
Damn, Robert.
Now, I found a DJ out of Jersey named Amir.
Okay. Yeah. Amir.
I was introduced to him in Chicago at one of the Chosen Peace parties, right?
Okay.
My girl Kenyatta introduced me. She said, "This is my friend,
right,
Amir. He's from New Jersey. He's a DJ."
Right.
And I looked. I was like, "What's that little fat boy doing?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, "Really? Okay, whatever." But I don't really dance anymore. Really, you have to really be playing something there.
They get you moving.
This boy, he was singing,
right,
and playing, and I a lot of the music he played, I didn't know what it was. It was good.
Right.
Then he played some jazz stuff. I was like, "What are you?"
Yeah.
That's
good that you say that, Robert. I want to put this right here while you talking about that, because you were like a psychic for choosing the right DJ for your space. Both Frankie and Ronnie are gone now. If you open up the Warehouse and Music Box tomorrow, who would be your resident DJ for each club right now? So a current DJ for both spaces right now. Who would you pick for that?
Probably my boy Ron Trent.
Okay.
And maybe Terry.
Nice. Okay. That's good.
Okay.
That's good. No apologies or nothing. No, you ain't got to hold nothing back. So Ron Trent and Terry on it.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I knew Terry when he was with Bad Boys.
Right.
Okay, I used to go to their little parties and laugh.
Right.
But I really never really heard Terry play before.
Right.
I know he was doing producing and stuff. Until recently, a year or so, maybe it was last year or so.
Okay.
We were at the Virgin Hotel.
Yeah.
Maybe not
the
that other one. But anyway, he decided to play music.
Right.
And I happened to be in the room, right?
Okay.
And I was like, "Who's the DJ?"
Right.
And they was like, "Oh, that's Terry." I said, "Terry who?" And they was like, "Terry Hunter." I said, "Playing like that?"
Right.
And they was like, "Yeah." And I went over to the booth and looked at him.
Right. You just couldn't imagine it, huh?
I was like, "Oh, so now you want to show out, huh?" So he played fantastic.
That's good.
Fantastic.
That's good. Terry came a long way, man. I appreciate that. I managed Terry back in the day, and I just seen so much growth and so much talent.
Oh yeah, he has.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But it's not. Like I said, if you want to, you have to represent Chicago. If you say this is the birthplace of house music, whoever you decide created it.
Right.
I don't care. It don't have to be me and nobody else.
Right.
It could be your puppy.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you have to represent it correctly.
Absolutely.
And if you don't do it musically, then I'm going to sleep.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right. That's we gonna end it right there, Robert. I think that was perfect. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest about these Chicago music DJs right now?
I just hope that the ones who are professional keep doing a professional job.
Right.
The ones who are hobbyists,
Yes.
stay on your hobby.
Okay. Well, Robert, I appreciate this. I appreciate you coming in and taking your time out and truly giving your heartfelt history about this, because I think that's one thing that we talked about earlier. Like, if Frankie and Ronnie was alive, would some of these same people be saying the same things
No.
that they're saying right now?
No.
About they was good friends with him. They did this. They went to the warehouse. They went to, they was hanging
See,
out.
that doesn't matter
Right.
to me about telling people I went to the warehouse, I went to the music box, I went to the loft.
Right.
You got to know, okay, if you went, fine.
Right.
Then you have to represent that.
Right.
If you're a DJ, if
Yeah.
you're saying, okay,
Yeah.
I don't expect you to play like Ron Hardy.
Right.
It's a new day,
It's a new day.
okay?
Right.
But Frankie and Ron were two different DJs.
Absolutely.
Completely two different DJs.
Yeah.
Ron was like a rebel,
Right.
didn't care.
Right.
Frankie played more by the book,
Yeah. Yeah.
He was professional now,
Right.
but he played a little differently.
So let me ask you this. Like you said, some people that does this for a hobby, even some DJs right now, they still playing music back in the warehouse days, 38 years ago, 30 some years ago. What is your outlook on that? Should it stay to the classic, or should we learn these new music and make them become classics?
Okay. A real DJ to me is a musician. Okay?
Okay.
So when I hear DJs play, right?
Right.
I'm a dancer. I'm in the audience, right?
Okay.
Or I'm just sitting around, right? I expect the DJ to teach me something. I depend on you. It doesn't matter if I know what you're playing or not.
Okay.
I expect you to teach me about music. I've heard classics. It's okay to play one or two, but this is a world full of music. Mm-hmm. So you have to introduce me to new sounds, like I had been introduced to all my life.
Right.
By the old cat.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So when I hear you guys playing new stuff, I hear people say, he always playing that new music. Well, what do you want to be, stagnant in music?
Amen, Robert. Amen.
I appreciate a classic here, but you have to play the right classic too.
There you go. Yeah. No, Robert, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for schooling us and taking us down memory lane and creating this history. I really appreciate it, man. Once again, I love you. Thank you so much. Without you, there wouldn't be any of us, I believe, because you, to me, is a founding father of this house music creation, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Appreciate you having me, Mr. Murray.
All right, sir. So we talk to you later. Thank you again. Thank you for watching Everything House Music More, y'all. Peace.